taken a look to see if the sanctions that we have on vessels, if this complies? That's always going to be the question, right? Does this comply with U.S. laws?
Is Trump willing to lock horns with Vladimir Putin over this?
What basis does the U.S. have for seizing Venezuela's oil?
Well, again, what is the legal basis to take another country's stuff, right? So that's a question that we're hoping to get some answers. I am always hopeful we will get answers from this administration, but I will say often I walk out of these briefs with more questions than I had when I went in.
They're sanctioned tankers. They don't seize every one of them. I mean, these are sanctioned tankers. Thank God for what President Trump is doing to try to get democracy and freedom back to Venezuela. Nicolás Maduro is a thug. He's killed American kids by sending criminals here. He's killed American kids with drugs. It's devastating. Every time I think about Nicolás Maduro, I remember in 2019, I went to Cúcuta on the border of Venezuela. I saw Venezuelan kids sleep on the street because they cannot afford to live in their country, coming across the border one time a day to get a meal. That's what this guy is.
What questions do you have for the briefers?
So the biggest thing I wanted to get now is I want to get these political prisoners released. We got Americans down there that are political prisoners. We got Venezuelans. They have to be released, and that's number one. And number two is Delcy Robinson, who is not the president of Venezuela. She is a thug, no different than Maduro. She was never elected. Okay, remember, she and Maduro stole the election. They need to stop the oppression. So number one, I want the political prisoners released, and number two, I want to stop the oppression.
So what about Greenland, sir? What about Greenland?
I'm sure we'll have a good relationship with
Does
Denmark.
the administration have a plan for what happens next in Venezuela?
I think they have a plan.
Look, I don't know what they're going to tell us today, but you don't have to be Einstein's cousin to figure out that at this juncture, two things are true. Number one, to invade Greenland would be weapons grade stupid. And Donald Trump is not weapons grade stupid. Neither is Marco Rubio. Number two, you can pretty this up all you want to. But unless you were playing Frisbee in the quad during History 101, you know that the future of Venezuela, one way or the other, is going to be determined by the military. Every time Venezuela has embraced democracy, it has been because the military has gone along. Every time Venezuela has rejected democracy, it has happened because of the military. In this case, let me finish, ma'am, if you don't mind, unless you want to come up here. This is not true in all cases, but in this respect, Mao was right. Power grows from the barrel of a gun, and the military here is key, and that's all there is to it.
All I'd say is this: there is still so many unanswered questions. I hope we get some answers today.
I think they've given us a lot of the information so far in terms of this was essentially a legal proceeding pursuant to a warrant. Both sides had said that Maduro need to be brought to justice. So really the question that I have today is, what are the next steps?
What about the continued role of the military? How is it law enforcement with the overwhelming military force that was used?
Well, clearly Maduro was essentially the head of a drug cartel. We had a warrant out for his arrest. There were resolutions on from both sides of the aisle, Republican and Democrat, saying, hey, we needed to do something about Maduro, and so President Trump did. And in fact, President Biden had a $25 million reward out. He just didn't act on it. Trump acted.
Can I ask about Greenland? How worried are you that the U.S. is talking about?
Well, that's something we'll ask Secretary Rubio about that. That's one of the things we want to understand. What are next steps?
First of all, I'm not going to talk about anything that was classified there, so no operational. This is an outstanding coordinated effort by from the intelligence community, to our men and women in uniform. Only the United States can pull this off, and this is something that should have taken place probably in a previous administration, but only President Trump had the backbone to pull it off, to pull out an indicted illegitimate president that was holding Venezuela hostage, and so glad this took place.
Are you worried about the oil tanker and what's happened this morning?
Let me go here first.
Are you worried about what's happened with an oil tanker this morning and the Russian response?
No, absolutely not. We're going to control our Western Hemisphere. This is the emphasis that President Trump has put in it. There is not going to be any oil coming in or out of Venezuela without our approval. Yes.
I wanted to ask about the reporting that we saw that Secretary Rubio had told lawmakers that President Trump wants to purchase Greenland. Can you tell us anything about that at all?
We didn't talk about that in this meeting. I'll keep our. There was no mention of Greenland.
Senator Mullen, can you talk about the plan going forward? Do you feel confident that the administration has the necessary plan in place for what could happen after Maduro is gone?
Absolutely. This was a coordinated effort with months of planning, understanding the contingency plans, the main plan, what happens going in to bring Maduro and his wife to justice, and then what happens with Venezuela moving forward. What we want to do is give the best opportunity for the Venezuelan people to take back their country and put it back in the democracy that they lost 25 years ago. And there is a full plan, full effort. If any Democrat comes to this mic and tells you anything different, obviously I'm not going to get in the details, but they are absolutely lying about it because there was a full, complete brief. I would say probably one of the best briefs I've ever received since I've been in Congress.
Do you think there could be elections there soon, and how soon could they
be? I think that'll take some time because the infrastructure hasn't been in place for 25 years, but that's ultimately our goal.
Chelsea Rodriguez stays in power. Was
Let me
it
go
worth
here.
risking U.S. troops
Let me go here and I'll get to you next.
regime in power?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Was it worth risking U.S. troops' lives to keep Maduro's vice president in power?
Well, look, our men and women that are in this line of work, this is what they sign up to do. This is what they train to do. This is why we have the best military and the best intelligence community in the world. They thrive to do this kind of work. What we did is we brought an illegitimate president out of Maduro or out of Venezuela, brought him to the United States to hold him accountable for the men and women he's killed on our streets by poisoning them. So it was well worth it. What happens next with the government? We're going to let the Venezuelan people choose that. Yes.
Do you hear anything that would give you an indication that American boots on the ground might be necessary if there are reports of violence sporadically?
There is no boots on the ground right now, but let me tell you, we have contingency plans all around the world just in case something does happen. I'm not speaking specifically to any plan, but I'm just saying that's what we do. We always have contingency plans to keep the American interest and our country safe. And so what I just reiterate this, the president and this administration is putting a heavy emphasis on the Western Hemisphere. For 25 years, we have focused elsewhere. We are now focused on our backyard, and we should be. Yes, ma'am.
Discussed it all in the briefing, and what comes next for Cuba?
The only thing that Cuba was not addressed, the only thing was talked about was the Cuban security force that was in ground, and what happened when they tried to engage with our men and women, which didn't end up very well for them.
So is the seizing of this Russian-flagged ship a direct challenge to Vladimir Putin?
Well, I would say that they claimed it was their ship. That's all I'm going to say. They claimed it was their ship, but obviously they didn't engage because there's a little bit of gravity that could take place.
How might this be interpreted?
It's not. We had made it very clear that there was no oil going in and out. This is our hemisphere, not Russia's. If they're going to operate here, we'll know they're operating here, and they will not call our bluff. We will stand up strong to them.
It's not just your hemisphere, though, is it?
Well, it's the Western Hemisphere, and there's no army or navy that's going to protect it better than we will. We're protecting our interests. Russia is not going to operate here open and freely. Period. Yes.
What is your view on Greenland?
That wasn't discussed. Greenland, as I already discussed, I think you made the answer. That wasn't discussed. That was not what this briefing's about. That's not what I'm going to be talking about. Yes. Go ahead. Go back. You got a question? I thought I heard you. Yes.
Is there a clear plan regarding demands to sever economic ties with China and Russia?
That wasn't discussed, and I don't think we want to sever ties with them. I mean, Russia. We've already pretty much put them in a whole sanction. China, we want to have a relationship. We want to have a relationship with China or with Russia too, but we're not going to allow China and Russia to back illegitimate regimes that are a criminal organization.
Was Nicaragua discussed?
That wasn't discussed. Wasn't discussed.
Did they say if the goal of this larger strategy, did they say it to take out the shadow fleet out of operation, or is it just to stop oil leaving?
Well, we've already made the shadow fleet a point of interest. That wasn't discussed in this meeting, but we have made it very clear that the shadow fleet is not going to be operating in our backyard.
So what's the broader strategy? What did they say what is the goal?
The goal is to bring stability to Venezuela and allow Venezuela to be a democracy again. Any oil that we have that we've seized and any oil that we bring in will be used directly for the Venezuelan people. It will not go into our treasury. Yes.
The use of U.S. military force to put some
That'll depend on what's taking place, but I don't think that at this point it's going to be necessary. I don't, it depends on what we're doing. If we're if we're going to an act of war, yes. If we're bringing a stabilizing force, I think the AUMF that's in place will probably be able to be sufficient.
Do you describe this as regime change?
No. What we did is we took out an illegitimate president. He was never duly elected. So there can't be regime change if he should have never been put in place to begin with.
Was his vice president duly elected?
I don't know how their elections happened. I don't know if they're on the same ticket or separate. I don't know how that works, but I know if we were interested in having a full regime change, if we were interested in taking over Venezuela, we would have left our force in place. We had control of what we wanted to. We were there as a law enforcement, and the military was backing up law enforcement to bring a guy who was indicted almost 6 years ago to justice in the United States for killing people on our own streets by poison that he allows to come out of his country.
Was Nicaragua oil?
It's not ours. We're holding it for the Venezuelan people. We're not taking it. We're not going to deposit it. We're going to use it for the Venezuelan people. That is not ours. Absolutely, we will not be using. Not $1 will come in to our treasury. It'll be used for the Venezuelan people. We are not interested in stealing their oil, taking their oil, anything. If we go in and we partner with them, and we have a partnership like we did a long time ago. I mean, think about Chevron. Right? We've had partnerships with Venezuela way before Maduro and his dictatorship or the previous dictatorship came in place. So this isn't, as far as partnerships with American companies, countries all around the world want to partner with American technology because we have the resources, we have the ability to do that. I just came back from the Middle East. I went to 3 countries over there. All 3 countries are wanting to partner with American oil companies because no one does it better and more efficient than us. So if businesses happen in Venezuela, we would love to have that business or business relationship. It'll all be about supporting the Venezuelan people and allow Venezuela to become that example they used to be 25 years ago.
Was Nicaragua saying that the U.S. has the right to that oil?
The what?
President Trump appears to be saying that the U.S. has the right to the oil.
I don't know. You say appears. I can't answer a question on hypothetical questions or what he says it. What he says is that the oil will be used for the Venezuelan people. He said that very clear. He's made that very clear. That we've also said that there isn't going to be any sanctioned oil that's going to be feeding China's economy or feeding Cuba's economy. We're not going to allow that to happen. Any oil we get will be taken and be sold on the open market to the people that want the oil to be paying for it on a legal basis. Anything? Yes.
What's the level of trust with Delcy Rodriguez and the administration?
Well, she's not a friend of ours. She's made it very clear she's not a friend of ours, but it's a trust but verify. All right, guys?
Was
anything
Nicaragua
else?
discussed?
Do what?
Was Nicaragua discussed?
No, was not discussed. All right, I'm going to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, first of all, I just want to say what we heard in there, at some point, a movie ought to be made about the heroics of our military. An operation like this could have never been pulled off in the history of the world by any military on the planet. Pretty exquisite joint force in the middle of the night, no warning. I think it sends a very powerful message to folks around the world, our adversaries around the world, the capabilities of the U.S. military in support of this law enforcement operation. So that's the first thing. I also think, too, having a illegitimate communist dictator who was poisoning our country with drugs, sending criminals to our country, and hosting a playground for our adversaries, especially China, was a very dangerous situation. That has now changed. So the plan moving forward is obviously the focus is on stability, which is why Rodriguez went from VP, was sworn in as the president. But the United States has tremendous leverage right now with the naval quarantine. I mean, they can't get their sanctioned oil out of there unless we let it out of there. And so that's the hope moving forward, that the stability can be brought about and maintained because of the leverage that the United States has right now. And I think that's the best way to describe the plan moving forward.
Some senators are saying that the US administration is winging it when it comes to a plan for Venezuela going forward. Did you get the sense?
I don't think that's fair at all. I actually heard, with Secretary Rubio and others that were in there, if anybody comes out of here saying that they didn't get a clear picture of what this looks like moving forward, they're not being truthful. This is very, I think the planning for this has been very deliberate in what this looks like. Look, there are always contingencies, there certainly are. But if you would have seen, this was not an effort to disrupt their economy or topple a whole regime or an effort to stay there forever. That's not what this is. This was a very specific action in our hemisphere to protect the American people from a dictator who allowed China, Russia, and Iran to have a base of operations not far from our homeland. And so there is a plan moving forward. It's based almost, I think most powerfully on the leverage that we have right now on the oil that is stacking up for them, that they need to get out. And we are the only country in the world that can let that get out.
Where's that oil going, sir? Is that oil going to the Venezuelan people, or is it going to the US?
Yeah, that's the hope. No, this is for the stability of the Venezuelan people. And they've been robbed of that, again, by a communist dictator for far too long. But as an American senator, the interests of the United States of America is my chief concern, and the interests of the United States of America have been furthered here in the Western Hemisphere, not in some far-off place. For 20 years, we're trying to build a Madisonian democracy in the sands of the Middle East or a tribal backwater in our own backyard. And by the way, a throwback to a doctrine that has served this country very well for 200 years, which is the Monroe Doctrine, which is this is our hemisphere. And the American people are safer when you don't have the kind of actors like Maduro.
Does that mean, was it your impression that the hemisphere means there could potentially be plans for the same type of thing in other countries beyond Venezuela? Was that discussed?
That wasn't discussed. I would also point out that Colombia is a very different situation than Venezuela, if that's what you're alluding to. But that really wasn't the purpose of this. This really was to go through the operational sophistication there that took place, which I'm obviously not going to share, but then also a broader rationale, which I think they answered all the questions that were asked. Now, Democrats, I'm sure, are going to come out here and say they have more questions than answers. That's just political posturing. What we heard in there was a very professional team that did something that, again, nobody in the history of the world could pull off, and we did that.
Did Greenland come up at all, sir? Did Greenland come up at all?
Not in.
Do you have a personal opinion on that? Are you concerned about military action in Greenland?
I personally think that we ought to be active in pursuing Greenland. Absolutely. I think if you acquiring Greenland is be my support. I would support that 100%. That's not what anybody's talking about. First of all, Denmark's claims are nebulous. People sort of skip over that page in history of their claims to Greenland. But I would fully be supportive of Greenland being a much more integral partner of the United States of America. If you look at a globe from on top, all of our defense of the Western Hemisphere, of the homeland, whether it's ballistic missile defense or in space, Greenland has an incredible strategic value and the critical minerals there. The other thing I would point out, China and Russia are operating off the coast of Greenland. Denmark is not capable of protecting Greenland. And so, in my view, we have a very keen interest in Greenland.
Denmark is willing to work with the U.S. Why does the U.S. have to own it? Denmark. Denmark is willing to work
Denmark's
with the US.
not capable of the protection that we need for our country. That's the problem. Well, my suggestion for Denmark would be to go to their European partners and actually have this much energy about the defense of their own continent. How about protecting your own continent instead of relying on the United States, which has happened, by the way, for decades now? Many of those countries are total freeloaders of American security. The president has made it very clear. We have expectations of what you're going to spend on your own national defense. What you're seeing is a very clear pivot from some of the concerns that have been around this town, permanent Washington, for a long time, this obsession with Europe. NATO has a very important role. They have to step up in a much more meaningful way for their own continent while we focus on the Western Hemisphere and the Indo-Pacific. If you read the national security document that just came out, that makes it very clear what the United States plan are. What's that?
NATO.
Who?
Do you think America
That's
wants
not what we're talking about. We're talking about NATO countries no longer being freeloaders of American taxpayers.
The UK and NATO.
Are there any other?
So
are there any other
UK
questions?
helped out with the
Discussion of what
operation.
this means for the stability of Cuba.
Well, I think Cuba certainly took notice of what happened, and if the American people didn't know then, they know now that the Cuban security forces were very much involved in what was going on in Venezuela. So, I'm sure they're paying attention.
Did the briefing discuss possible action in Cuba or
No.
Nicaragua?
So you're saying that NATO are freeloaders, but the UK, as I understand, helped out in a significant way with the seizing of this tanker, this Russian.
What I'm talking
tanker.
about is
What
their
do you-
percentage of their GDP spent, and I'm not, percentage of GDPs aren't munitions. Munitions win wars. So the deindustrialization, this is sort of a side issue, but the deindustrialization that's happened in Europe, and including in Germany, has really hurt Europe's ability to defend itself and produce things to defend itself. That has to change. You know, if Putin is actually Hitler, you would think there'd be a greater sense of urgency on the continent, and we haven't seen that. Now, I will say there's been positive move forward in this term with President Trump. They are committed to that, but it can't be for pensions. It can't be for pensions. It's got to be for munitions. And so that's the kind of partnership that the United States of America is looking for with our European allies. It's not adversarial. It's just say, hey, we have big concerns in the world that center on the homeland in the Western Hemisphere, as demonstrated in the past week, and also the rise of China. Those are their biggest strategic imperatives. And so, again, it just calls for Europe to step up in a more meaningful way than they have before.
I made it clear that the public needs answers. Across America, people are just saying, what the hell is going on? We need answers as to how long this is going to last. We need answers to how many troops, how much money, are there guardrails, things we don't do. And a number of things that we talked about were very troubling. There's a real, I am totally dissatisfied about their answers of going into other countries, totally dissatisfied of what they might be doing in Greenland, as well as in Colombia, Mexico, and other countries. And we're also totally dissatisfied about succession. They're relying to help them run Venezuela, help Trump run Venezuela, of the most unreliable, corrupt people who hate America. So this is fraught with peril. The American people, the public, not just in a classified room, the American people need answers. Tim.
And I'll just say this, and we've got the two cabinet secretaries here, and they heard what I said in that room. We are 4 months into a sustained military operation. More than 200, quote, enemies have been killed. American troops have been injured. We have the U.S. forces arrayed around Venezuela, but neither the House nor the Senate have been willing to hold a single public hearing to put these facts before the public. Why not? We need to start doing our job. What they will do is get us in a classified setting where the leader of the Senate says, this is not for public consumption. And so the questions that we have about the legal rationale, we cannot discuss in public. The questions we have about the strategic rationale, we cannot discuss in public. About the targeting criteria, we cannot discuss in public. About what's next, is Greenland next, is Colombia or Mexico or Cuba next, it's very hard to discuss in public. We've got to get this discussion out of the skiff and into the public before it's too late.
The reason we need hearings, public hearings, is the Founding Fathers, when they gave the Congress the power to make war, knew that this is such a powerful and fraught with peril issue, making war, that a public discussion was required. They're avoiding all public discussion. To talk to us in the skiff, where we didn't get adequate answers even to our questions, but not let the American people know what they're doing, when it's the American people who have always paid the price when we try to do this regime change in blood and treasure. We need answers. We need answers to these questions, and we need them made publicly.
Do you feel confident about the administration's plan going forward with Venezuela? Do you think that they have all the necessary planning in place?
I think it's quite solid, and I think if people could hear everything that we just heard, I think they'd have a renewed confidence in that, in both the planning leading up to it and the planning going forward.
How worried are you about the process going forward about Greenland?
Well, I don't know the process going forward about Greenland, but I'm quite confident that the two countries, our country and Greenland, or our country and Denmark, can work something out in a business relationship to take full advantage of the resources that Greenland possesses to the benefit of the Western world and the free world.
And do you think if the administration does plan military action in Greenland, that they need to come to Congress first?
I personally have a hard time believing that that's even a possibility.
But why did they not take it off the table? I mean, Caroline Leavitt put a statement
I
out
thought Caroline Leavitt's statement, quite honestly, was simply a statement of fact at the end of a longer statement in the context that you're talking about. Her statement at the end of that statement was simply a statement of fact of the powers of the Commander-in-Chief of the United States military. So I mean, I get that you want to attach that to some sort of intent. I did not. I thought it was, like I said, a solid statement of fact. Hi.
Several of our European and NATO allies are responding to these kinds of statements already, very much opposed to what they're hearing from the White House. So isn't that in itself a problem? Even if the White House isn't serious about military action, several of our friends think they are.
I think that President Trump's a master negotiator.
Senator, what about the military down in Venezuela now in the area? Was there a plan for what's going to happen, how long they'll be there, boots on the ground in Venezuela at some point?
I think the administration has been really clear that there's no intention to have boots on the ground. It seems to me that one of the strongest rationales for leaving the current regime in place is that this was a military operation to assist in execution of a legal warrant on criminals. It was not about a regime change. So the same regime is in place with the vice president, the minister of defense, all the things you all know. I think that's what maintains the legal standing of the whole operation and the United States position.
Did you get a better understanding of this whole arrangement for the oil?
I did, and it's somewhat encouraging. But you know me, when people wonder when major corporations like Chevron, Exxon, Conoco, Marathon are looking for places to invest in oil discovery, I have a really good spot in North Dakota for all of them. And we'd be happy to help them build refining capacity to use Bakken oil.
Well, there's a lot of operational details that can't be discussed publicly, obviously, for obvious reasons. So as we move forward, we'll describe our process, which is a threefold process in Venezuela. I've described it to them now. Step one is the stabilization of the country. We don't want it descending into chaos. Part of that stabilization, and the reason why we understand and believe that we have the strongest leverage possible, is our quarantine. As you've seen today, 2 more ships were seized. We are in the midst right now and in fact about to execute on a deal to take all the oil. They have oil that is stuck in Venezuela. They can't move it because of our quarantine and because it's sanctioned. We are going to take between 30 and 50 million barrels of oil. We're going to sell it in the marketplace at market rates, not at the discounts Venezuela was getting. That money will then be handled in such a way that we will control how it is dispersed in a way that benefits the Venezuelan people, not corruption, not the regime. So we have a lot of leverage to move on the stabilization front. The second phase will be a phase that we call recovery, and that is ensuring that American, Western, and other companies have access to the Venezuelan market in a way that's fair. Also, at the same time, begin to create the process of reconciliation nationally within Venezuela so that the opposition forces can be amnestied and released and from prisons or brought back to the country and begin to rebuild civil society. And then the third phase, of course, will be one of transition. Some of this will overlap. I've described this to them in great detail. We'll have more detail in the days to follow. But we feel like we're moving forward here in a very positive way.
So how long will this take, Secretary?
Some senators who were in that briefing describing your operation variously as that you're winging it, that there's no plan for Venezuela going forward.
Yeah, I know. They're going to say that. I used to be a senator too. That's what you always say when it's the other party. The bottom line is we've gone into great detail with them about the planning. We've described it to them. In fact, it's not just winging it. It's not just saying or speculating it's going to happen. It's already happening. Like the oil arrangement that we've made with PDVSA on their sanctioned oil that they can't move. Understand, they are not generating any revenue from their oil right now. They can't move it unless we allow it to move because we have sanctions, because we're enforcing those sanctions. This is tremendous leverage. We are exercising it in a positive way. The president described it last night. Secretary will have more to say on it today, who is involved in running this portfolio. And we feel very positive that not only will that generate revenue that will be used to the benefit of the Venezuelan people, and we're ensured that that's what the case is, but it also gives us an amount of leverage and influence and control over how this process moves forward.
Mr. Secretary, on Denmark, sir. Mr. Secretary, on Denmark. Why has the administration not taken Denmark's offer to discuss the situation in Greenland? And
I'll be meeting with them next week.
But will you take military intervention off the table?
I'm not here to talk about Denmark or military intervention. I'll be meeting with them next week. We'll have those conversations with them then. And but I'm not having anything further to add to that today.
Can you clarify your comments to lawmakers? Does the U.S. intend to buy Greenland? Does the U.S. intend to buy Greenland? Can you clarify your comments to lawmakers this week?
Well, that's always been the president's intent from the very beginning. He said it very early on. I mean, this is not new. He talked about it in his first term, and he's not the first U.S. president that has examined or looked at how could we acquire Greenland. There's an interest there. But so I just reminded them of the fact that not only did Truman want to do it, but President Trump's been talking about this since his first term.
The White House put out a statement last night saying that the military option is on the table.
Lost a lot of weight.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. They said the military option is on the table. So is the administration really willing to risk the NATO alliance by potentially moving ahead with military operations?
What I think the White House said yesterday is what I will tell you now, and I've always said. The president always retained the option. Every president, not this president, every president always retains the option. I'm not talking about Greenland. I'm just talking about globally. If the president identifies a threat to the national security of the United States, every president retains the option to address it through military means. As a diplomat, which is what I am now, and what we work on, we always prefer to settle it in different ways. That included in Venezuela. We tried repeatedly to reach an outcome here that did not involve having to go in and grab an indicted drug trafficker. Those were unsuccessful, unfortunately.
The people of Venezuela are waking up to the same regime. Do you not worry about that?
Well, first of all, the bottom line is that there is a process now in place where we have tremendous control and leverage over what those interim authorities are doing and are able to do. But obviously this will be a process of transition. In the end, it will be up to the Venezuelan people to transform their country. We are prepared under the right conditions, using the leverage that we have, which includes the fact that they cannot move any oil unless we allow them to move it to... Well, again, I'm not going to give you a timeline on it. We wanted to move as soon as possible. But we didn't expect this would... It's been 3 days since this happened, 4 days since this happened. So I understand that in this cycle and society we now live in, everyone wants instant outcomes. They want it to happen overnight. It's not going to work that way. But we're already seeing progress. With this new deal that's been announced and more deals to follow, you're already seeing how the leverage the United States has over those interim authorities is going to begin to lead to positive outcomes.
How much does this cost American taxpayers? How long should
it
the
doesn't
American
cost
public?
us. It doesn't cost us.
The U.S. involvement in Venezuela. How much will it cost?
Well, it's not going to cost us any money. For example, this oil deal that's happening doesn't cost us any money. On the contrary, and if it opens up,
no money to the
well,
American
look, I don't have the numbers. What operation are you talking about? The entire thing?
Yeah.
Well, these troops are going to be deployed. None of these troops sit in a dry dock waiting for action. They're deployed somewhere in the world. If they're not here, they're somewhere else. Just today, our forces not deployed to the Caribbean seized a boat, a sanctioned boat tied to the IRGC that tried to flee from us. That happened somewhere else. We are constantly involved in action. We have boats in the Mediterranean. We have ships in the Middle East. We have ships in the Indo-Pacific. These ships, if they weren't in the Caribbean, they'd be somewhere else conducting activity. Yeah. That's what the Navy does.
Yeah. No, I want to emphasize that question from CNN. The question's never asked how much does it cost when they're in the Mediterranean or the Red Sea or the Indian Ocean or the Pacific. But now that they're in our hemisphere on a counter-cartel mission or ensuring that an indicted individual comes to justice, now you're asking the question of cost. It's a disingenuous question to begin with. You're trying to find any angle possible to undermine the success of one of the most historic military missions the world has ever seen. The level of sophistication that Senate just was briefed on and the House was briefed on, a classified level, is something only the United States of America can accomplish. The world is taking notice of that. Certainly Venezuela is taking notice of that. And it continues because 2 oil tankers, 2 overnight, were seized by the United States of America, stateless or sanctioned, because the oil blockade, the quarantine of oil out of unsanctioned or stateless, sanctioned or stateless vessels continues. That leverage will continue as Secretary Rubio outlined. So our military is prepared to continue this. As he said, the president, when he speaks, he means it. He's not messing around. We are an administration of action to advance our interests, and that is on full display. We're happy to brief the House and the Senate. We have nothing to hide.
2 quick things, okay? Number one, because we have to go, because we got to brief the House, and if we don't and they're pissed at us, you guys better defend us. That was because we were talking to you. I would make one more point, and it's a very interesting point. One of those ships that was seized that had oil in the Caribbean, you know what the interim authorities are asking for in Venezuela? They want that oil that was seized to be part of this deal. They understand that the only way they can move oil and generate revenue and not have economic collapse is if they cooperate and work with the United States, and that's what we see are going to happen. We got to go talk to the House, guys. I apologize.
Well, you testified.